A crackdown against protests in Zimbabwe intensifies with the arrest of prominent pastor Ivan Mawarire. He has been charged with inciting public violence. Mawarire is one of the organizers of recent protests calling for a change of government. He is behind the hashtag #ThisFlag protest. A national shutdown protest last week had a palpable effect on the country. Many businesses, shops and schools remained closed. Public transport and some government departments and courts too were not functioning. Pastor Mawarire called for another shutdown today.
The police advised us that he was facing a charge of contravention of Section 187 as read with Section 36 of the Criminal Law Codification, which is basically incitement to commit public violence. What they were looking for basically are three things: a button stick, a crushed helmet, and subversive material. He's going to spend the night with the Resando police station. He's in custody. He has been formally charged and is going to be appearing in court tomorrow for initial remand.
This morning we are joined by political analyst Setagi Khomo live in studio. Setagi, good morning and welcome. Thank you for joining us this morning. Pastor Ivan Mawarire spent a night in jail after being charged with inciting public violence. Let's talk a bit firstly about the charge. What's your take on that?
Well, I think the most important thing to actually look at is what is it that the people of Zimbabwe expect of their government. I think the government of Zimbabwe and Zimbabwe as a country, it is not an isolated island, but it resides within the 30-member state of SADC. And the emphasis there is regional economic integration, which means that none of the economies that we have among the member states can thrive in an isolation fashion. So therefore it stands to reason that Zimbabwe had to actually come to the party in terms of contributing towards that economic integration. So now, what the people of Zimbabwe have been looking forward to and protesting for is their government to look after them. They are actually saying to the government that let us ensure that the economic situation of Zimbabwe is returned to the normality, a healthy economic situation. Structural reform in terms of that economy is required urgently in order that the country can realize its true economic potential, in order that it can generate jobs, it can actually secure the people the livelihood that they require. Now, should the leadership have realized these important strategic imperatives, the case that you are talking about would not have happened at all, and it is very sad. Because what is very, very important and very urgent for the leadership is to ensure that they zoom onto the strategic reforms of that country. Look at the whole question of the ban on important goods and services on the manufacturing side, etc. The question is, what does that do to advancing the objectives of regional economic integration? I don't think it does that. It instead insulates the economy of Zimbabwe outside of the entire region, because it says that let us promote the industries domestically within Zimbabwe. Then at the end of the day, then you cut yourself out of the SADC region, which is the region that you cannot do without. So what I would like to say to you today is that the people of Zimbabwe are hungry for structural economic reforms. Look at the currency. Today they do not, as a sovereign state, they are supposed to be able to say this is our currency. They've been advised by one key economist from the Development Bank of Southern Africa that they should actually, within 2 years, revert back to their own Zimbabwe currency, but they did not do that. Hence, today we talk of a situation where they were unable to pay their civil servants. That tells you that structurally the economy is actually going to the mud, so to speak. And that is unnecessarily given the fact that if they had vision, if they had take counsel from the people that have done economics, we shouldn't be talking about somebody who has spent a night in jail at all. We should be talking about what are the challenges structurally have to be addressed by the government of Zimbabwe.
Setache, I hear you when you say that we ought not to be talking about this pastor who has spent a night in jail as we're speaking, but he did spend the night in jail. And a lot of people, supporters rather, of the campaign that he started, this hashtag, this flag, have been seen saying quite a few comments on Twitter, and one of them being that he is also seen as the martyr for what the Zimbabwe, the reconstruction, people are calling it the anti-Mugabe regime, where they're asking, like you said, the restructure of Zimbabwe altogether. But once again, on the charges of public violence, from your perspective as a political analyst, could you perhaps say that he did incite public violence by coming out and being an activist on this campaign?
Well, the first thing before you charge anybody, there should be prima facie evidence, and that relates to the nature and quality of intelligence from the police or from the military or from the national intelligence side as to what it is. I would like to presume, therefore, that they had the intelligence information that suggests that there is a reason to actually then arrest that. My preoccupation here is that the government should actually be expending more of its time on addressing the issues of the economy rather than arresting people and charging them for something that should not even have arisen as a charge. I believe that whatever is the driving force behind that, but I presume that the actual root cause is that the people want economic reforms. They want the government to address the economic issues. But if there are other things, like what I've just learned from the ANC, that there should be a hand behind the protests, etc. So if that is the case, then intelligence should be able to have picked up that information to say somebody wants to institute regime change. I would like to say that it is probably very unfortunate that they have to actually arrest somebody for incitement of violence. Whether there is merit in that in terms of prima facie, it stands to be seen. But I would like to say that the government had to actually hamper. They had to actually tread very carefully, because they will actually be unnecessarily raising the temperatures. I would like to believe that it would be better to actually release the guy and perhaps bring together the leadership of those people that have been in protest and engage them and probably map the way forward. But I would like to believe that government knows what needs to be done. That is the structural economic reform. That's very key.
Absolutely.
And addressing all the systematic things that have been
okay, thank you very much, Setache Khomo, for joining us this morning. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for this morning. Yes, and that was political analyst Setache Khomo joining us live in studio, discussing on the arrest of Pastor Ivan Mawarire, the activist for hashtag this flag, happening right now in Zimbabwe. Now, time